Hello everyone, and welcome back to our quiet corner of history, where the echoes of ancient worlds drift softly into your present. Tonight we're not just observing, we're stepping into a realm where the very air you breathe and the ground you walk upon held a primal fear, a fear shaped by the most terrifying monsters of Greek mythology. Allow your mind to softly drift as we journey back to a Greece far removed from the rational marble and philosophical discourse. You might imagine a Greece where the monstrous was an inescapable reality, threading through every aspect of existence. The ancient Greek world, far from being a realm solely of rational thought and shining marble, thrummed with the unsettling presence of the monstrous. You'd think, wouldn't you, that a society famed for its logic would prefer a tidier, more predictable universe? But as an inhabitant of this distant past, you quickly learn such neatness is a luxury. For most, life is lived on the frayed edges of certainty, where the world is explained not just by reason, but by something far more primal and terrifying. Beyond the Olympian gods, a chilling bestiary born from primordial chaos or divine ire haunted the very edges of your maps, and often wandered into the heart of your daily life. You might wake to the familiar golden orb of the sun, but beneath that warmth, the shadows of these creatures stretched long and dark. These weren't mere bedtime stories whispered to restless children. They were tangible threats and potent symbols. You felt their presence in the sudden, unexplained withering of crops, the baffling disappearance of a shepherd's flock, or the inexplicable terror gripping a nearby village. They weren't abstract concepts, but forces impacting your survival, your family's well-being and your community's fabric. From overwhelming forces of nature personified, the rumbling earth beneath your feet, the churning unpredictable sea, to guardians of cosmic order and products of divine hubris, the monsters were an inescapable reality. They wove a tapestry of fear, wonder, and profound meaning into the fabric of your existence, a constant reminder that you are a small, vulnerable part of a vast, untamed universe. To live in ancient Greece was to live in an uneasy truce with powers beyond your comprehension, forces that could bless you one day and utterly destroy you the next. This omnipresent tension, this subtle hum of dread coloured every aspect of your life. Within this harrowing macro-reality, the monstrous entities of Greek myth permeate the very sensory and material aspects of daily existence, turning routine life into a constant negotiation with the terrifying and unpredictable. You quickly learn that survival here isn't just about farming or raising children. It's about navigating a world where the boundaries between the known and the terrifyingly unknown are incredibly thin. Every sunrise brings potential for a new encounter, a new threat demanding not just vigilance, but a profound understanding of where these creatures lurk and how their presence contaminates your world. You see it in the wary glances of neighbours when a child strays, hear it in hushed prayers, and taste it in the scarcity following a monstrous incursion. This is history you breathe, feel, and sometimes flee from. You become intimately familiar with unsettling landscapes, for these are the monstrous habitats that define your boundaries and etch fear into your soul. Take for instance the Lernaean marshes and the Hydra. These aren't just stagnant steaming waters. They are a notorious gateway to the Underworld, a place where the very air feels heavier, colder, tinged with a foreboding silence, broken only by unseen croaking and distant, unsettling sloshing. Here in this putrid realm lives the Hydra, a massive multi-headed serpent whose presence poisons the ground and air. You've heard of those who ventured too close returning with tales of an unholy stench clinging to their clothes, a putrid smell of sulphur and decay that no scrubbing could erase. It's a constant warning that the land itself can turn against you, corrupted by a creature's breath. The lingering putrid smell of its venom, you understand, isn't just physical. It's a psychological burden. It permeates the consciousness of anyone living within a day's journey of Lerna, a constant low-level anxiety in your gut. You learn to avoid the area, choosing longer, more arduous routes, because the risk of encountering the Hydra, or even breathing its poisoned air, is too great. Fishing becomes impossible, and local flora once useful now carries death's taint. You might unconsciously hold your breath when the wind shifts, carrying that faint, unsettling odour from the marshes. It's a silent, pervasive threat dictating where you build, farm, and allow your children to play. The Hydra is not just a monster in a story. It's an economic depressant, an environmental disaster, and a deeply personal fear. Your journey through these terrifying landscapes continues, bringing you to the scorched hills of Lycia, where natural phenomena embody monstrous horror. In your ancient Greek world, the ghostly blue flames flickering across the hillsides aren't methane seepages. They are the breath of the Chimera, a fire-breathing hybrid monster. Its very existence means a constant threat of conflagration, a low-level dread in your stomach whenever winds pick up. For shepherds, travellers and residents, the Chimera isn't just a beast. It's a fiery sword perpetually overhead. The acrid smell of burnt crops and sulphur you discover hangs heavy in the air, a scent that never truly leaves a constant reminder of the beast's destructive power. You learn to associate wood smoke, usually comforting, with potential sudden, devastating loss. Your heart quickens at a distant glow, fearing the worst. Imagine your painstaking labour consumed by divine fire. The economic implications are staggering: entire harvest, generations of livestock gone. Communities resettle, abandoning fertile lands driven by a monster embodying unpredictable, destructive natural forces. You understand that the land itself is alive, and sometimes it breathes fire. Next, you contemplate the treacherous Strait of Messina, a narrow, perilous sea passage between Italy and Sicily. This isn't just difficult water. It's a literal choke point for sailors where navigation is a desperate gamble. Here you face not one but two monstrous entities, Scylla and Charybdis. You've heard the chilling tales from grizzled sailors, their eyes wide with fear. Navigating one danger means skirting the other, an impossible choice. Scylla, with her 6 ravenous heads, plucks sailors from decks like olives from a bowl, her chilling high-pitched yelp echoing as she snatches men. You imagine the sudden terror, the desperate cries of shipmates, the sickening thud. On the other side, Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool, sucks down entire ships into a whirlpool that drinks the ocean with a monstrous roar of churning water. To choose between them is to choose your preferred method of death. Do you risk the immediate agonizing loss of a few men to Scylla, or the complete destruction of your vessel and cargo by Charybdis? It's a particularly grim math, a calculation you'd rather not make forced upon every captain who dares these waters. This strait isn't just a navigational hazard. It's a psychological gauntlet where hope often dies before the ship reaches the other side. From the open, perilous seas, you're now drawn into the suffocating darkness of a monumental architectural nightmare, the Cretan Labyrinth. You've heard tales of its origin, a testament to Daedalus's genius built for King Minos, yet serving a sinister purpose. This isn't merely a maze, it's a sprawling, disorienting prison where every turn looks the same and the way out is a cruel illusion. And within its oppressive confines a beast lurks. The Minotaur, half-man, half-bull, stalks the endless corridors. You understand that this labyrinth transforms a grand palace into a place of suffocating fear and slow disappearance, a grim monument to human and divine folly. Imagine being one of the Athenian youth sent as tribute, walking into that suffocating darkness. Your only constant in the oppressive gloom is the echoing sound of your own footsteps, a rhythm that slowly drives you mad. Each breath feels heavy, the air thick with dust, stale stone, and something else. Something animal, something predatory. You strain your ears, hoping for a guide, a friendly voice, anything but the distant, unsettling roars that occasionally pierce the silence. Those roars aren't just sounds. They are harbingers of death, the guttural declaration of the beast's hunger. The labyrinth isn't just physical terror. It's psychological torment where hope slowly erodes, replaced by icy dread as you wait for the inevitable. You try not to think of others who walk these paths, their cries now silent. Venturing from grand structures, your world also holds the raw danger of remote caves and wild expanses. Here in hidden, dank recesses lurks Echidna, the mother of monsters. She isn't just a creature of myth. She represents primordial threats beyond human settlements, the essence of untamed wilderness. You learn quickly that venturing off well-trodden paths is to gamble with your life. These are places where unseen hissing things crawl in shadows, where the musky, unsettling scent of predator hangs heavy, a warning often too late. Echidna, with her serpent body and beautiful maiden's face, is a deceptive horror, luring the unwary to their doom. She devours any men who pass, adding another layer of fear to the wilds. You imagine a hunter drawn by a glimmer of light finding themselves face to face with this hybrid horror. Her existence reinforces the belief that chaos and danger constantly encroach on fragile human order. These remote places are not just geographical features, they are spiritual thresholds, gateways to a world teeming with unholy ancient terrors. You learn to respect boundaries, to stay within the familiar glow of village fires, knowing that beyond them the world is a different, much more dangerous place filled with creatures embodying your deepest fears. As your understanding of the monstrous landscape deepens, your gaze inevitably turns to the very edges of the known world, to a place where terror is not just physical, but profoundly existential. Here, at what the ancients considered civilization's furthest reaches, reside the Gorgon's Medusa and her two immortal sisters. Their story's chilling lesson in divine caprice and the fragility of mortal beauty. Medusa, once a beautiful priestess transformed into a hideous monster by Athena, after a violation in her own temple, now possesses a power so profound, so absolute, that a direct gaze means instant petrification. You understand that this isn't a mere injury or quick death. It's an unyielding, horrifying transformation of living flesh into cold grey stone. It's an end that robs you, not only of life, but of your very essence, turning you into an eternal, unfeeling monument to your own demise. To confront such a creature, you quickly realize requires not just strength, but cunning of an almost divine caliber. Heroes like Perseus are forced to rely on indirect vision, using a polished shield as a mirror, a chilling reflection of the fragility of direct confrontation with such overwhelming power. You imagine the hero shield-raised eyes averted navigating the Gorgon's lair by reflections, the image in the bronze, a distorted, terrifying echo of reality. It highlights a fundamental truth: sometimes the most dangerous truths cannot be faced directly. To look upon Medusa is to surrender your will, your life, to a force that reduces you to an inanimate object. Her presence, even in far-flung reaches, sends ripples of terror, a potent symbol of what happens when beauty is cursed and power is weaponized by the gods. It reminds you that even at the edges of the world, the gods' influence and their monstrous agents can reach you, transforming you unimaginably. Moving from the petrifying stillness of the Gorgons, you also learn to fear the unseen intangible forces manifesting as bringers of misfortune, the Harpies. Originally fierce storm spirits, these creatures evolved into grotesque bird women who snatched food, leaving behind a foul scent, and were believed to carry plague. Their shrieking cries, described by those unfortunate enough to hear them, were like rusted hinges scraping in the dark, a sound that chilled you to the bone. You experience their impact not just in grand heroic tales, but in the mundane, painful realities of your daily life. Imagine waking to find your carefully laid harvest scattered, your provisions ravaged, and a lingering putrid smell of rot, smoke and salt clinging to the air, making your stomach churn. This isn't just theft. It's a direct assault on your sustenance, a blow that can mean the difference between life and agonizing starvation. Worse, you fear the plague they are said to carry. A fever, a cough, a sudden sickness sweeping through your village. You might attribute it to the Harpies, their vengeful presence infecting your community. Their shrieks embody the daily struggle against hunger and disease caused by unseen, vengeful forces stripping you of control and reminding you of utter vulnerability. The harpies you understand are not just mythological creatures, they are the personification of your constant gnawing anxiety about survival. Your daily existence steeped in the ever-present shadow of terrifying creatures means that something as fundamental as diet and sustenance becomes a constant negotiation, a battle for survival. You quickly learn that hunger isn't just an empty feeling. It's a profound existential dread amplified by monstrous forces actively conspiring against your well-being. This isn't just about scarcity. It's about deliberate malicious deprivation orchestrated by powers beyond your control, turning the simple act of eating into an act of defiance, or often an exercise in futility. A full stomach, you realize, is not just comfort, but a luxury, and a fleeting one at that. Consider the torment of King Phineus, a tale echoing through your society as a grim warning about revealing divine secrets. His punishment, orchestrated by the gods, involved perfectly prepared food laid before him daily. Imagine the tantalizing aromas, the sight of delicacies. But then, as he reached out, as hope flickered, the harpies descended in a fury of wings and claws. You can almost hear their rush, their frantic wings, their guttural shrieks as they snatched meals away, or in a crueler twist fouled them with vile filth. The king amidst plenty was condemned to slow agonizing starvation, an endless, torturous feast for the eyes that never reached his lips. This isn't just a king suffering, it's a chilling metaphor for the precariousness of your own food supply. While you might not have harpies directly assailing your dinner, you understand the profound vulnerability. Phineus's story reminds you that even if you work tirelessly, even if abundance surrounds you, capricious forces can snatch it away or render it inedible. It's a constant gnawing anxiety shaping your approach to every meal. You eat quickly, guard your provisions, understanding that true sustenance is always a temporary blessing easily undone. The psychological toll is immense. Every bite is tinged with awareness of what could be lost, taken, or fouled. Beyond such direct torment, the mere presence of monstrous creatures actively depletes your community's resources, casting a long hungry shadow over daily life. The Chimera, with its fire-breathing capabilities, isn't just a beast of legend in Lycia. It's a relentless destroyer of your livelihood. You've seen the evident scorched earth, where fields once flourished charred remains of livestock. Its fiery breath means constant threats to cultivated fields and valuable livestock, leading to widespread food scarcity and economic instability for communities. You understand that every harvest lives under the shadow of fiery destruction. This means less food on your table, fewer animals to trade, and a constant struggle to rebuild what is inevitably lost. The Chimera isn't just eating your sheep. It's eating your future, your children's inheritance, and your community's prosperity. This continuous threat forces defensive measures, prayers for divine intervention, and the grim understanding that your most basic needs are always at the mercy of a monster's whim. Your existence is a tapestry woven with constant threats to sustenance, and the Minotaur's grim tribute stands as a stark, horrifying example of how even human lives are considered a resource to be fed to the monstrous. You know the story, a chilling reminder of Athenian subjugation and Crete's terrifying power. Every 9 years, a ship with black sails would depart from Athens carrying its precious doomed cargo, 7 Athenian boys and 7 maidens. Imagine the quiet despair gripping the city during selection, the heart-wrenching goodbyes, the silent tears of parents as their children are led to the docks knowing their fate. This isn't just a brutal historical fact. It's a routine sacrifice, a mandated loss of human resources deeply impacting the population's future. You feel the weight of this tribute not just in immediate grief, but in long-term societal implications. It's a wound that never truly heals, a constant drain on the city's potential, ensuring perpetual sorrow. These young lives, vibrant and full of promise, are literally fed to a beast, their vitality consumed to appease a monster and maintain a fragile peace. The Minotaur's hunger dictates a grim form of population control, a chilling reminder that even your children are not safe from the monstrous and the political powers that wield it. You wonder if your own child will be chosen a thought, sending a cold shiver down your spine, making every moment with them precious and precarious. Beyond the direct consumption of human life, the environmental consequences of monstrous presence further diminish your capacity to sustain yourself. The Lernaean Hydra, for instance, isn't just a creature of direct combat. Its venomous blood and breath transform its entire environment into a toxic wasteland. You understand that the swamp around it isn't just a murky bog, it's a poisoned realm where water sources are contaminated and plant life withers. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a catastrophic blow to your ability to survive. Hunting, fishing, or gathering in the vicinity becomes impossible, turning once fertile or resource-rich areas into forbidden zones of death. This environmental scarcity contributes to broader economic hardship, forcing communities to seek sustenance elsewhere, often in already crowded or less productive lands. You feel the squeeze of this reality in the market, where prices for uncontaminated produce soar and in increased competition for viable hunting grounds. The Hydra's poison seeps not just into the ground, but into the very fabric of your economic stability, making the struggle for daily bread an even more arduous task. You learn to read the landscape not just for signs of edible plants, but for the subtle, terrifying indicators of monstrous contamination, a constant battle against an unseen insidious enemy. For ancient Greek sailors, the existence of Scylla and Charybdis transformed a vital trade route into a gauntlet of death. You know the importance of the sea, the lifeline it provides for connecting cities, for exchanging goods, for bringing in necessary resources. But this narrow strait becomes a horrifying bottleneck, forcing ships to either sacrifice men to Scylla or risk losing an entire cargo and crew to Charybdis. You hear stories from the docks, hushed accounts of captains returning with fewer men, their faces etched with trauma, or the grim silence when a ship never returns. This isn't just loss of life, it's significant economic hardship and resource loss for maritime cities. Valuable goods, essential provisions, and skilled sailors are swallowed by the monsters, impacting the prosperity and resilience of entire communities. You understand that every voyage is a high-stakes gamble against forces that care nothing for your trade prosperity or lives. The scarcity of open, safe waters means higher prices, fewer goods, and a constant low-level anxiety permeating every aspect of your maritime economy. In a world where monstrous perils constantly threaten your sustenance, survival often hinges not on brute strength, but on cleverness, a quick wit, and an almost superhuman capacity for ingenuity. You quickly learn that relying solely on your sword arm won't get you far when faced with a regenerating serpent or a mesmerizing song. This constant need for ingenious methods to secure safe passage or resources becomes a daily mental burden, a subtle, pervasive stress for those who live near such threats. You realize that mere physical power is often insufficient. True heroism, and indeed true survival, demands a sharp mind and an even sharper understanding of the world's hidden dangers. Take, for example, the legendary Odysseus facing the seductive sirens. You can almost hear their enchanting fatal song weaving through the salty air, promising knowledge, pleasure, and ultimately death. Odysseus doesn't confront them with a weapon. He stuffs his crew's ears with wax, sealing them against the irresistible melody, and has himself tied to the mast, ensuring he hears the song but cannot succumb. This isn't simply a clever trick from a storyteller. It's a profound act of self-control and strategic thinking that would make any modern general nod in reluctant appreciation. For you, the common sailor, it's a lesson in obedience and trust, in understanding that sometimes the greatest dangers appeal most directly to your senses and deepest longings. You learn to be wary of beauty, for it often masks deadly intent. Similarly, consider Heracles and the Hydra. You'd think a hero of immense strength would simply hack away, but Heracles quickly learns that for every head he severs, two more grow back, a horrifying symbol of an impossible problem that brute force cannot solve. His solution is not more violence, but intelligent, almost ritualistic cunning, cauterizing each neck with a torch after cutting a head, preventing regeneration. This act illustrates the constant need for innovative strategies for understanding specific vulnerabilities rather than simply rushing in. For you living in the shadow of such threats, these stories are not just entertaining myths. They're practical lessons, blueprints for survival, emphasizing observation, adaptation, and a deep respect for each monster's unique dangers. The ever-present threat of unseen hunger beyond specific monsters fosters a pervasive sense of vulnerability regarding your daily sustenance. The general belief in creatures like Echidna devouring men or harpies stealing children isn't just folklore. It's a chilling lived reality that impacts your family's psychological well-being and creates a gnawing anxiety. You learn to keep children close-eyed deep forest shadows with suspicion and count provisions twice over. Food could be snatched from your larder, or children vanish into the wilds never to be seen again. This isn't a fear of dramatic heroic confrontations. It's a quieter, more insidious anxiety permeating the everyday. You understand that your world is filled with hungry eyes with predatory desires, and that your security is always tenuous. This pervasive vulnerability means every meal you put on the table, every child you tuck into bed, is an act tinged with awareness of potential loss. It shapes your rituals, prayers, and conversations, reminding you constantly that while you may strive for order, chaos and hunger are always lurking just beyond the firelight. In this world where monstrous threats are interwoven with daily survival, even the most private and mundane aspects of your life, like hygiene and personal care, are profoundly influenced by danger-divine scrutiny and an ever-present awareness of ritual purity. You quickly realize that being clean isn't just about physical comfort. It's a spiritual defense, a societal expectation, and sometimes a perilous act itself. The very air around you can be thick with unseen contaminations, and the simple act of washing can draw unwanted attention, turning a moment of vulnerability into a moment of divine wrath. You learn that in ancient Greece, cleanliness is indeed next to godliness, but a lack of it can be next to death. Consider the Furies, ancient goddesses of vengeance whose very description sends shivers down your spine. They are often depicted with feathers, streaked with filth, and a foul odour, a visual and olfactory representation of spiritual corruption. Their presence, you are taught, brings miasma, a profound spiritual pollution clinging to individuals, households, and communities. This belief profoundly influences your daily rituals of purification and cleanliness. You don't just wash your hands, you perform ceremonial washes to ward off their perceived unclean influence. The burning of herbs, a common attempt at ritual cleansing, isn't just about scenting the air. It's a desperate plea to keep these terrifying entities at bay, to cleanse the spiritual taint their pursuit of justice or vengeance can leave behind. You understand that miasma isn't just a metaphor. It's a tangible force affecting crops' health, social standing, and relationship with the gods. It is a burden that can follow you, a spiritual grime needing constant vigilance. Your hygiene, therefore, is not merely personal. It's communal responsibility, a subtle act of appeasement to a cosmic order demanding purity. Then there is the cautionary tale of Actaeon, a stark reminder of the extreme care and even fear surrounding accidental encounters with divine beings, particularly during vulnerable acts like bathing. Actaeon, a skilled hunter, inadvertently stumbled upon the goddess Artemis bathing naked in a sacred grove. His accidental gaze, innocent though it may have been, incurred immediate and terrible divine retribution. He was transformed into a stag and subsequently torn apart by his own hounds, unable to communicate his identity. This story highlights profound strictness around privacy and sacred spaces, especially for the gods. You learn that even an unwitting transgression, a simple glance, can incur instant divine wrath. Imagine the terror. One moment you're bathing peacefully, the next you are running for your life. Your own loyal companions turned against you, your humanity stripped away. This chilling narrative reinforces the idea that even during personal acts like bathing, you're never truly alone, never truly unobserved by the watchful, often vengeful eyes of the gods. It instills deep caution in how you navigate the natural world, reminding you that every spring, every grove, every secluded spot might be sacred, a place where divine beings might be found, and where your accidental presence could lead to your horrific undoing. The world you inhabit is rife with tales blurring the lines between human and monster beauty, and horror often rooted in moments of personal care. Scylla's tragic transformation, for instance, serves as a chilling reminder that even the most pristine natural places of cleansing can be corrupted by divine malice, turning what should be refreshment into monstrous change. You know her story. Once a beautiful maiden, she frequented a spring to bathe. But the jealous sorceress Circe, enamoured with Glaucus, who loved Scylla, poisoned the spring waters. When Scylla entered her lower body, transformed into horrific, barking dog heads, ultimately turning her into the sea monster you now fear. This narrative instills a profound wariness towards seemingly pristine waters. You might hesitate before drawing water from a natural spring, wondering if it too has been tainted by a jealous god or a vengeful sorceress. The story reinforces the pervasive idea of a world where beauty could quickly turn monstrous, where purity could be corrupted, and where the gods' petty squabbles could inflict unimaginable suffering and deformity. You learn that trust in nature's benevolence is a luxury you cannot always afford, for even the most innocent places can harbour a curse. Your personal care rituals therefore become laced with quiet apprehension, a subtle understanding that even in moments of peace the divine can intrude with devastating effect. Following any encounter with the monstrous or divine wrath, elaborate purification rituals become not just customary, but often absolutely necessary. These aren't simple acts. They're ingrained parts of your daily routines, and communal life imbued with urgency and solemnity. Imagine a hero returning from battle, his hands stained with ichor, or a family narrowly escaped a monstrous attack. From ceremonial washes after a close call to cleansing bloodstains after a battle, these rituals impact your daily existence profoundly. You might observe a warrior meticulously cleansing armour, body and weapons, not just of physical grime, but of the spiritual taint of violence and unnatural death. These acts often involve specific herbs prayers and sometimes even animal sacrifices, all designed to restore balance and ward off lingering miasma. The impact on communal life is significant. These rituals are often public, drawing the community together in shared concern and collective cleansing. They reinforce the idea that pollution, whether physical or spiritual, affects everyone, and that collective effort is required to restore purity. You understand that these purification rites are not just about washing dirt. They're about washing away fear, restoring order, and reaffirming your place in a world constantly threatened by chaos. Moreover, vivid descriptions of monsters often include a foul, unholy stench. The harpies, as you've heard, leave behind a sickening aroma of rot, smoke and salt. Some Gorgon portrayals might include a repulsive serpentine smell. This pervasive olfactory horror contributes to a cultural emphasis on personal and communal cleanliness, not just for health, but as a symbolic ward against the chaotic and defiled monstrous. You learn to associate cleanliness with order, humanity, divine favour and filth, with the monstrous, the chaotic, the accursed. Cleanliness therefore becomes a spiritual defence, a way to distinguish yourself from the unholy creatures that roam your world. You strive for a clean home, clean clothes and a clean body, not just for comfort, but as an active rejection of the defilement represented by the monsters. This subtle yet powerful cultural association means that hygiene is elevated beyond mere practicality. It becomes a profound symbolic act of resistance against encroaching chaos, a daily affirmation of your humanity in a world that constantly threatens to strip it away. Living in a world where unseen monsters or angered gods could strike at any moment carries a profound psychological burden, a constant state of vigilance. You quickly realize that true peace of mind is a rare, almost unattainable luxury. This perpetual alertness influences even the simplest daily acts. Drawing water from the village, gathering wood from the nearby forest, or embarking on a journey to the next town, each task is tinged with a subtle, pervasive anxiety. You always have to be aware of your surroundings, your senses finely tuned to any unusual sound, any sudden movement in the periphery. Imagine collecting firewood, your back turned, the rustle of leaves amplified. Is it just the wind or something else, something with teeth and scales? This isn't paranoia. It's a necessary survival mechanism, a low-level, gnawing anxiety that becomes intrinsic to your existence. You might unconsciously scan skies for harpies, or check the path for a lurking beast. This constant state of readiness makes daily life feel like a tightrope walk, where a single misstep or moment of inattention could mean instant demise. The psychological toll of this ceaseless watchfulness is immense, leaving you perpetually on edge even in moments of apparent calm. In stark contrast to the grotesque forms of the monsters that plague your world, Medusa's writhing snakes, Echidna's oily scales, the harpy's matted filth, your society places immense value on meticulous grooming and physical perfection, especially for the elite. These monstrous deformities serve as a terrifying counterpoint to human beauty and order, implicitly reinforcing societal values. You understand that a well-groomed appearance isn't just about aesthetics. It's a visual rejection of chaos, a deliberate statement of humanity striving for order and control in a world that constantly threatens to pull you into disarray. For noble families, maintaining a pristine appearance becomes a subtle yet powerful display of their status and perceived closeness to the gods, who are often depicted as paragons of beauty. Imagine elaborate rituals of bathing, anointing with oils, and carefully styling hair, each step a meticulous performance to project grace and refinement. This isn't just vanity. It's a social and even spiritual defense. To be ugly, deformed, or unkempt is to risk association with the monstrous, the unholy, the cursed. Your society sees beauty as a reflection of inner harmony and divine favour, while ugliness is often a mark of divine displeasure or primordial corruption. Thus grooming becomes a daily ritual of affirmation, a quiet declaration of your humanity in the face of terrifying, grotesque alternatives. This careful attention to appearance filters down to varying degrees to all levels of society. While a common farmer might not have access to scented oils or elaborate hairstyles, he will still strive for a certain level of cleanliness, a certain order in his presentation, if only to differentiate himself from the untamed wild and its inhabitants. The contrast is stark, the smooth skin and ordered hair of a human against the scaly hide and tangled serpents of a monster. This societal emphasis on beauty and meticulous care serves as a constant unspoken reminder of the fine line between human order and monstrous chaos, a line you are constantly striving to maintain and reinforce through your daily habits. Your daily labour and responsibilities in ancient Greece are not merely about productivity. They're inextricably linked to a brutal system of penance, divine demands, and constant, often deadly threats from monstrous entities. You quickly realize that your work is rarely just work. It's a testament to your endurance, a desperate gamble for survival, and sometimes a direct confrontation with the very forces that seek to undo you. The concept of labour here takes on a far heavier meaning, laden with risk and overseen by capricious powers. Consider the legendary 12 labours of Heracles. These weren't just heroic quests for glory. They were immensely demanding physical and intellectual tasks of brutal labour exacted by the gods, as penance for a moment of madness. Slaying the Nemean lion whose hide was impenetrable required not just strength but ingenuity. Battling the Lernaean Hydra, as you've learned, required strategic cunning beyond mere brute force. Capturing Cerberus, the three-headed hound of the Underworld, was a journey into the realm of the dead itself. Each labour demonstrated not just unprecedented strength and endurance, but also a deep well of cunning amidst immense danger. You understand that these labours, while exceptional, reflect a broader reality that the gods can at any moment impose monumental, life-threatening tasks upon mortals demanding atonement or simply demonstrating their power. Heracles' suffering is a magnified version of your own daily struggles against a world demanding ceaseless effort and offering little guarantee of reward. His story teaches you that even the strongest among you are subject to divine will, and that labour can be a form of divine punishment, a crucible through which your very essence is tested. For the farmer, daily life is a relentless cycle of peril and protection. You as a tiller of the earth face the constant threat of your fields being scorched by the Chimera, leaving nothing but acrid smoke and barren soil. Your precious livestock, the very foundation of your family's wealth and sustenance, could be devoured by other beasts roaming the untamed wilds. This isn't just about bad weather or pests. It's about monstrous predation, an active, malevolent force targeting your livelihood. This necessitates daily vigilance and never-ending watchfulness over crops and animals. You construct rudimentary defensive measures, thorny hedges, stone walls, sharpened stakes, knowing they might offer meagre defence against a formidable foe. And crucially, you perform rituals offering sacrifices and prayers to appease the gods, hoping for their favour and protection from monstrous incursions. Your labour in the fields is intertwined with spiritual duty as a constant plea to the heavens for mercy. Every seed you plant, every animal you tend is an act of hope performed under the grim shadow of potential destruction, a hope that tomorrow will not bring fire or tooth to your doorstep. The farmer's peril is a quiet, grinding daily struggle. For ancient Greek sailors, the labour of sea travel was fraught with known dangers, turning every voyage into a high-stakes gamble against monstrous forces and unforgiving elements. You as a mariner understand that the vast blue expanse connecting your world is also a hungry, unpredictable entity. Known dangers like Scylla and Charybdis in the Strait of Messina demand constant alertness, skilled navigation, and a grim acceptance of potential losses. You watch your captain, his face etched with countless voyages, making impossible decisions. Losing 6 men to Scylla's Moor is a particularly grim math, a horrifying necessity to ensure the rest of the crew and cargo make it through. Imagine the tension on deck as you approach that perilous strait. The air itself feels charged, the crew silent, save for the creak of timbers and slap of waves. You brace yourself, knowing that for some shipmates this might be their last journey. This isn't a job for mere coin. It's a labour of courage, a constant battle against forces that could swallow you whole. The grim acceptance of potential losses is not just strategic, it's a profound psychological burden, a quiet understanding that your life and the lives of those beside you are constantly on the line. You learn to live with this precariousness, to find solace in the shared fate of your crew, and to navigate not just the physical waters, but the deep, terrifying currents of fear and sacrifice. Deep beneath the world of the living, another form of eternal labour ensures the cosmic order you rely upon. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, holds an eternal, tireless labour at the gates of the Underworld. You might not see him, but you understand his purpose. He's a monumental guardian, ensuring that no soul escapes and no living mortal enters without permission. Imagine the sheer, unyielding vigilance required for such a task, an eternity spent, guarding a threshold between life and death, an endless silent watch. Cerberus's role is a chilling metaphor for the unshakable duties upholding the universe. His constant presence, even in unseen depths, reinforces belief in a structured cosmos where every entity, even a terrifying monster, has a purpose in maintaining balance. His labour is one of passive yet absolute control, a constant reminder that death is a final ordered journey, and that boundaries once crossed are rarely recrossed. You understand that this is a responsibility of constant silent vigilance, a labour so profound it underpins the very reality of life and death as you know it. The burden of royal judgment also constitutes a heavy labour, particularly for rulers like King Minos of Crete. His labour of maintaining power over Athens involved enforcing the tribute of Athenian youths for the Minotaur, a grim administrative task weighing heavily on both ruler and populace. You understand that kings too are bound by circumstances and gods forced to make terrible decisions to maintain authority or appease monstrous demands. Minos' decision wasn't simply an act of cruelty, it was a desperate administrative labour, perpetuating a cycle of fear and sacrifice. This is a labour of moral compromise, of political necessity, where state needs are pitted against innocent lives. You see how the terror of the Minotaur is weaponized, used as a tool of control, and how even a king must labour under such grim responsibilities. His labour isn't physical, but psychological and political, demanding an unyielding will to enforce a brutal decree. It forces you to confront the unsettling truth that power often comes at an unimaginable human cost, and that rulers too are often prisoners of their own terrifying systems. Beyond the physical and administrative labours, your world also presents an intellectual labour of life and death, nowhere more chillingly exemplified than by the Sphinx's riddle. For the citizens and travellers of Thebes, this monstrous entity imposed a terrifying mental challenge. Imagine the paralysing fear gripping the city, this silence fallen over the marketplace, the desperate attempts by scholars and commoners alike to solve the riddle. Failure resulted in immediate brutal death. This wasn't a game. It was a matter of life or death, turning intellectual acumen into the ultimate currency of survival and paralysing daily movement and trade with its chilling challenge. The Sphinx, with her lion's body, eagle's wings, and woman's head, sat perched on a rock outside the city, demanding an answer from every passer-by. You can almost hear the soft, unsettling hiss of her voice as she poses her infamous question: what walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? The answer, seemingly simple in hindsight, required a profound understanding of the human condition and the passage of life. But for those caught in the moment with the Sphinx's piercing gaze, the pressure was immense, often leading to fatal paralysis of thought. This labour wasn't about strength. It was about the power of the mind, a terrifying test of human intellect against divine cunning. It ensured that every step outside the city walls was a gamble, every journey a potential encounter, with a deadly intellectual challenge ending your life instantly. But perhaps the most pervasive and constant labour for all Greeks was the ongoing effort of appeasement and vigilance. Beyond direct encounters with monsters, your daily lives involved the meticulous labour of maintaining ritualistic piety, offering sacrifices and interpreting omens. You performed these acts not out of mere devotion, but to avoid offending capricious gods and inadvertently attracting monstrous attention. This wasn't a one-time task. It was a pervasive mental and spiritual burden for every citizen. Imagine the careful selection of a sacrificial animal, the precise words spoken during a prayer, the anxious wait for a sign from the heavens after a perceived transgression. You understand that a wrongly worded prayer, a forgotten offering, or a misunderstood omen could invite divine wrath, manifesting as famine, plague, or worse, the unleashing of a monster. This constant spiritual labour meant that every aspect of your life, from personal to communal, was imbued with religious significance and a deep sense of responsibility. You were always in a subtle yet profound way performing for the gods, seeking to maintain their favour and avoid their terrifying displeasure. This pervasive need for appeasement was a quiet, relentless form of mental labour. You were constantly monitoring your words, actions and thoughts, always aware that the gods were watching, listening and judging. It fostered a culture of caution, respect and ritualistic adherence where deviation could have catastrophic consequences. The fear of inadvertently attracting monstrous attention kept you on a straight and narrow path, a constant unspoken weight on your shoulders. This was the silent labour, underpinning all others, the fundamental act of navigating a world where divine power could shift from benevolent to terrifying in an instant. In this world permeated by the monstrous and the divine, childhood and education are far from idyllic. You as a child in ancient Greece would have grown up immersed in a reality where terrifying monsters were not just figments of imagination, but potent lessons and ever-present possibilities. Your education began not in formal schools, but in the oral traditions of your family and community, filled with vivid cautionary tales. Stories of the multi-headed Hydra, the fire-breathing Chimera, and the man-eating Minotaur would have filled your young mind, shaping your understanding of the world's pervasive perils from a tender age. These myths weren't just entertainment, they served as powerful cautionary tales. You would have learned through these narratives against wandering into dangerous, untamed places where a beast might lurk. You would have absorbed lessons about defying the gods, understanding that hubris, even in a child, could lead to dire consequences. These stories subtly instill a deep sense of the world's inherent dangers, teaching you respect for the unknown and a cautious approach to life. Imagine sitting by the fire, listening to an elder recount the terror of the labyrinth, their voice dropping to a hush as they describe the Minotaur's roar. Such stories would have etched themselves into your consciousness, becoming an intrinsic part of how you perceived safety, danger, and the boundaries of your world. For commoners like yourself, education was intensely practical, focusing on skills necessary for immediate survival in a world teeming with real and perceived threats. This wasn't about abstract knowledge, it was about acquiring the means to feed your family and protect your community. You would have been trained in hunting, learning to track game and understand the rhythms of the wild, always with an inherent awareness of potential monstrous encounters looming just beyond the familiar. You would have learned fishing techniques, understanding the perils of the sea and its hidden creatures. Farming, the backbone of your society, would have been taught with meticulous detail, including the protective rituals necessary to ward off supernatural blight or monstrous predation. Rudimentary self-defense would have been a part of your upbringing, not for grand battles, but for everyday encounters with dangerous animals or unexpected threats. You learned to handle a spear, a slingshot, or a simple club, knowing that you might need to defend yourself or your flock at a moment's notice. This practical training ensured that you were equipped as best as possible to navigate a world where a wrong step could mean a fatal encounter. Your education, therefore, was a direct response to the immediate tangible dangers that surrounded you, preparing you not just for life but for survival against forces both natural and monstrous. For noble children, particularly boys, education took on a different yet equally dangerous dimension. Their curriculum included rigorous martial arts training, strategic thinking, and the recitation of epic poetry. Heroes like Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus served as paramount role models not just for their physical prowess, but for their cunning and their divine favour. You would have heard tales of their battles against the Hydra, the Gorgon, or the Minotaur, learning that strength, cunning, and the ability to garner divine assistance were absolutely necessary to overcome the formidable, often monstrous challenges that faced heroes and kings. This elite education wasn't just about personal glory, it was about preparing future leaders to protect their people from external threats and divine displeasure. They learned how to lead, how to fight, and crucially, how to navigate the complex relationship with the gods. You would have seen these young nobles training their bodies, hone their minds, filled with stories of courage and sacrifice, understanding that their future roles meant facing down the very terrors that instilled fear in the common populace. Their education was a preparation for a life of constant challenge, where the line between heroic glory and a tragic, monstrous demise was incredibly thin. While boys of noble birth were groomed for martial prowess and monstrous confrontations, girls' education, regardless of social standing, was firmly rooted in household management, weaving, and the correct performance of religious rituals. You, as a young girl, would have learned that your role, though different, was equally vital to the safety and well-being of your family in this dangerous world. Weaving, for instance, wasn't just a practical skill. It carried profound cultural significance, sometimes tinged with cautionary tales. The story of Arachne, who dared to challenge Athena in a weaving contest and was transformed into a spider, served as a grim reminder of the dangers of hubris, especially when one's craft might inadvertently offend a deity. You would have learned intricate patterns, delicate loom work, understanding that textiles were essential for clothing, household goods, and even offerings. But beneath practical lessons was a deeper curriculum: how to maintain home order, manage resources, and create sanctuary against chaos. Crucially, your education emphasized correct performance of religious rituals and offerings to the gods. You would have learned specific prayers, appropriate sacrifices, and festival timing, all understood as essential for maintaining household safety and appeasing potentially wrathful, monster-sending deities. Your careful adherence to these rituals was believed to protect your family from disease, famine, and malevolent forces. In a world where monsters and gods could strike your piety and ritualistic precision were potent defences, for children born into prominent families, the possibility of an inherited curse or a divine prophecy would have shadowed their upbringing from a young age. You might have heard whispers about the tragic fate of Oedipus, cursed to kill his father and marry his mother, or the complex prophecy surrounding Perseus. This wasn't idle gossip. It was a deeply ingrained aspect of their destined lives. Their education and life choices felt preordained, heavily scrutinized, carrying an unseen burden of fate. Imagine growing up knowing your future, perhaps even your doom, has already been woven by the fates. This knowledge would have imbued every decision, every interaction with immense gravity. Every action, every perceived character flaw would be viewed through the lens of that prophecy, potentially accelerating its fulfillment. Such children were not truly free. They were actors in a divine drama, their lives a terrifying unfolding of a predetermined script. This weight of prophecy instilled unique discipline, but also profound helplessness, making them keenly aware of destiny's often cruel hand. Their upbringing was a delicate balance between preparing them for their fated role and attempting, often futilely, to avert the inevitable. From a young age, you would also have learned about the Greek afterlife, a concept shaping your understanding of mortality and spiritual duties with quiet solemnity. You would have heard tales of Charon, the ferryman across the river Styx, and Cerberus, the three-headed hound guarding Hades. These stories weren't to frighten you, but to prepare you for death's inevitability and proper burial rituals. You would have learned that leaving a coin for Charon under the deceased's tongue was non-negotiable for their passage. Apparently even the afterlife has its tolls. An unburied soul was condemned to wander eternally. This education instilled profound respect for the dead and for the cosmic order of the Underworld. It influenced your understanding of mortality, teaching you that life was a temporary journey, and what came after required careful preparation and tradition. The Underworld, guarded by monstrous entities like Cerberus, was not just a place of fear, but a structured realm demanding respect and ritual. This knowledge, imparted from childhood, ensured that death was not an unknown terror, but an understood, albeit solemn, transition. The constant exposure to vivid descriptions of monsters from a young age had a profound effect on your developing imagination, blurring the lines between reality and myth. You as a child would have grown up with an inner world populated by terrifying yet strangely familiar figures. Typhon's many voices, said to range from the roar of a bull to the hiss of a snake, would echo in your mind during thunderstorms. Medusa's writhing snake hair would become a haunting image in your dreams. Cerberus's 3 heads, each barking a different cadence, would be the sound of ultimate finality. This isn't just about passive consumption of stories, it's about the active shaping of your perception of reality. The unknown became both terrifying and strangely familiar because you had these vivid, concrete images and sounds to attach to abstract fears. That rustle in the bushes at dusk, it could be an animal, or it could be Echidna, mother of monsters. The strange cloud formation on the horizon, perhaps a harpy bringing ill tidings. Your imagination, fueled by these powerful myths, was a vibrant, often terrifying landscape where monsters were always lurking just out of sight yet intimately understood. This blending of reality with myth created a unique psychological framework where the world was alive with possibilities both wondrous and horrifying, and you learned to navigate both the tangible and the imagined with equal caution. From the immediate challenges and routines of individual existence, you now pivot to a broader perspective to understand how these very monsters and divine entities intricately shaped the overarching cultural beliefs, social etiquette, and personal relationships that bound ancient Greek society together. You realize that the horrors you've encountered thus far are not isolated incidents. They're integral threads in the grand tapestry of your society, defining not just what you fear, but how you live, how you interact, and how you love. The presence of terrifying monsters and the capricious gods who spawned or wielded them fundamentally dictated the unspoken rules, rituals, and personal bonds within ancient Greek society, creating a social fabric woven with both reverence and dread. You quickly learn that your place in this society, your interactions with your neighbours, your family, and even your own thoughts are constantly being scrutinized not just by your fellow mortals, but by powers far greater and far more dangerous. This means that social graces are not just about politeness. They're often about survival, about navigating a complex web of divine expectations and communal anxieties. Imagine the subtle shifts in conversation when a certain god is mentioned, the sudden solemnity, the careful choice of words. You understand that every social interaction, every cultural practice, every family dynamic is tinged with the awareness of these unseen, yet profoundly influential forces. The monsters and gods are not just external threats. They're internal architects shaping the very soul of your society, demanding a constant balance between fear and devotion, caution and celebration. This profound influence means that the social fabric of ancient Greece is far more intricate, far more layered and far more precarious than it might first appear, with every thread holding the potential for both strength and terrifying vulnerability. In a world where gods are always listening and monsters are often their instruments, communication and social etiquette are far from simple pleasantries. They are fraught with peril, demanding meticulous care and profound reverence. You quickly learn that your spoken words, your opinions, and even your boasts carry immense irreversible weight, potentially invoking divine wrath or social ostracism. This isn't a place for casual chatter. It's a stage where every utterance is a performance subtly judged by unseen powers. The peril of loose tongues is nowhere more evident than in the tragic tale of King Phineas, whose suffering you've already considered in the context of sustenance. His punishment by the Harpies for revealing too much truth and speaking freely of the gods' secrets underscored the extreme danger of vocalizing divine knowledge or opinions without proper reverence. Imagine the weight of a secret, a glimpse behind the cosmic curtain. Phineas, perhaps out of hubris or a desire for wisdom, dared to speak what he knew, and for that he was condemned to eternal hunger. His story highlights how opinion, especially about the divine, is a profound liability in a world where gods are always listening, always judging, and always capable of swift, brutal retribution. You learn to censor yourself, to think twice before speaking particularly about the mysteries of Olympus. Casual speculation or irreverent commentary about the gods is not just rude, it's dangerous. The air itself feels thin, ready to carry your careless words directly to the ears of a vengeful deity. This creates a society where cautious speech euphemisms and polite evasions become ingrained social norms, a necessary defense against inadvertently attracting divine displeasure. You'd prefer, wouldn't you, to simply nod politely and keep your more controversial thoughts to yourself rather than inviting the wrath of a god? Some battles are simply not worth picking. The echo of disrespect, however, doesn't always come from revealing secrets. Sometimes it stems from sheer arrogance. Queen Niobe's fatal boast is a chilling example of this. You know the story, Niobe, proud of her 14 children, 7 sons and 7 daughters, dared to mock Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis, who had only 2 children. Her verbal arrogance, her hubris in bragging about her numerous offspring, and directly disparaging a goddess, incurred swift and devastating divine vengeance. Apollo and Artemis, in a horrifying display of power, shot down all of Niobe's children with their arrows. Niobe was then turned into a weeping stone, eternally mourning her loss. This tragedy illustrates how spoken disrespect towards the gods could incur swift and devastating divine vengeance, where the spoken word carried immense irreversible weight. You learn that modesty, humility, and a deep respect for the divine hierarchy are not just virtues, they're essential for survival. To boast to elevate oneself above the gods is to invite catastrophic downfall, a harsh lesson delivered with divine precision. Your words, you realize, have the power to create or destroy, to honor or offend, and in this world offending a god is a path to utter ruin. The silence of the graves where Niobe's children lie serves as a stark, permanent reminder of the perils of a careless tongue. Your understanding of verbal peril deepens with the treacherous power of truth, a concept that in your world can be more dangerous than any lie. Princess Cassandra's curse by Apollo is a harrowing example of this. You know her tragic fate blessed by Apollo. With the gift of prophecy, she rejected his advances, and in retaliation he cursed her. She would always speak the truth, her prophecies would always be accurate, but no one would ever believe her. Imagine the agony to foresee disaster, to warn your loved ones, your city of impending doom, only to be dismissed as mad. This curse highlighted the terrifying social consequence of speaking an inconvenient truth to a society that preferred flattery to accuracy, comfort to confrontation. Cassandra's warnings about the Trojan horse, about the destruction of Troy, were met with scorn and disbelief. This led to her profound isolation, an agony of unheard accurate warnings, a torment far worse perhaps than physical pain. You realize that sometimes truth is not a liberating force but an isolating burden, particularly when it contradicts popular belief or challenges entrenched power. Her story is a chilling reminder that in a world where divine caprice dictates fate, the truth itself can be a weapon turned against you by the very gods who bestowed it. It teaches you to be wary of knowledge, especially prophetic knowledge, and to understand that the burden of truth can be a lonely, terrifying road. In contrast to Cassandra's direct yet unheeded truths, the oracle's riddles and ambiguity become a pervasive social norm, a cultural discipline that teaches you to navigate a world where direct answers are rare. The Pythia at Delphi, speaking for Apollo, delivers prophecies that are always vague, always with just enough ambiguity. You might consult the oracle for matters of state, for personal dilemmas, for guidance in war or peace, only to receive a cryptic response that requires careful interpretation. This necessity for interpretation, for cautious speech in response and for indirect communication, becomes a social survival skill. It's a constant tightrope walk of meaning, where misinterpreting a divine message could lead to devastating consequences, as many a king or general discovered to their sorrow. You learn to listen not just to the words, but to the nuances, the tone, the context. knowing that your life might depend on your ability to decipher the god's true meaning. This pervasive ambiguity shapes your intellectual approach to problems, encouraging a more nuanced and less direct form of communication in all aspects of society. You quickly understand that in this world certainty is a rare commodity, and wisdom often lies in the careful art of interpretation in reading between the lines of divine pronouncements. Divine contempt for nonsense also deeply impacts social conduct, particularly concerning religious matters. King Pentheus's fate serves as a brutal lesson in this regard. You've heard how Pentheus, the king of Thebes, dismissed Dionysus's ecstatic worship, and his followers the Maenads as mere nonsense, a barbaric and foreign cult. His refusal to acknowledge the god's divinity, and his attempt to suppress the Dionysian rites, led to his horrific dismemberment by his own mother Agave and other Maenads, who in their divine frenzy mistook him for a wild animal. This demonstrates the absolute intolerance of the gods for any verbal questioning or mockery of their rituals and authority. You learn that reverence in speech, especially regarding cults and divine practices, is not optional. It is strictly enforced, often with terrifying consequences. To call a god's worship nonsense is to invite total annihilation, a fate that is both gruesome and deeply humiliating. Pentheus's story ensures that you never openly scoff at what others hold sacred, for fear of incurring a similar bloody retribution. You understand that some truths, even if they seem absurd to your rational mind, must be respected, or face the terrifying might of the divine. In a world where divine beings observe and judge your every word, the silent power of observance becomes a critical social strategy. You quickly learn that sometimes the most eloquent statement is no statement at all. The concept of Eusebia, impiety, wasn't just about acting improperly toward the divine. It specifically included speaking ill of the gods after dark, a time when their presence was believed to be more potent, their ears more attuned. This teaches you that silence, particularly during sacred times or in the quiet hours of night, is better, safer. You understand that even a whispered doubt or a careless joke about a deity could be heard and interpreted as an offence. This reflects a pervasive cultural fear of inadvertent verbal offences, encouraging a quiet, watchful demeanour in public, and even in the privacy of your own home when the sun sets. Imagine the atmosphere in your village at night: hushed conversations, voices kept low, a subtle tension in the air as everyone implicitly agrees to avoid topics that might draw unwanted divine attention. This silent adherence to piety is a constant unspoken discipline, a collective effort to maintain peace with the unpredictable powers above. You recognize that sometimes your survival depends not on what you say, but on what you don't say, choosing the path of discretion over the perilous freedom of speech. This complex relationship with the gods, who didn't want truth, they wanted flattery, mandated a social etiquette of constant appeasement. You learn quickly that sincerity is often less important than correct posture, carefully chosen words, and elaborate demonstrations of respect. This isn't about genuine affection for a deity. It's about a cosmic etiquette that governs public and private expression to avoid divine wrath. You might witness a king making a public offering, his words flowing smoothly, praising the gods with a deference that might not be entirely heartfelt, but is absolutely necessary for maintaining his power and the favour of Olympus. This means you learn to craft your prayers, your odes, and your public declarations with extreme care, ensuring they always strike the right tone of humility and praise. You understand that the gods are vain, easily angered, and demand unwavering adulation. To question their wisdom, to doubt their power, or to offer anything less than total veneration, is to risk inviting their terrifying displeasure. This social strategy of flattery and submission shapes your entire approach to the divine, turning piety into a practiced art, a nuanced performance designed to secure protection rather than express true devotion. You are, in essence, constantly performing for a divine audience where the stakes are your very life and the well-being of your community. From the specific strictures of communication and etiquette, you now pivot to the broader cultural disciplines that served as profound performances, shaping your understanding of order chaos and your place within the cosmos. You recognize that these aren't just abstract beliefs. They are embodied in rituals in art and in the very language you use to describe your world. These cultural disciplines, these acts of societal performance, aren't merely traditions. They are vital mechanisms for navigating a world constantly teetering between human order and monstrous chaos. They provide frameworks for understanding, for coping, and for attempting to control the uncontrollable. You see how your society constructs meaning, how it interprets the divine, and how it grapples with the terrifying unknowns that lie beyond the city walls. This constant act of cultural performance is not just an expression of identity. It's a desperate, ongoing effort to impose meaning on a world that often defies rational explanation. A world where the gods and monsters are the ultimate choreographers of your fate. The Oracle's rituals at Delphi stand as a paramount example of cultural discipline, performed as a divine high-stakes spectacle. You understand that Delphi is not just a temple. It's the spiritual heart of your world, a place where mortals attempt to bridge the chasm between their reality and the will of the gods. The Pythia, the priestess, embodies this connection. You know the stories of her sitting on a tripod over a chasm, inhaling subterranean vapours, perhaps ethylene unknown to you then, but perceived as the breath of the earth itself channeling Apollo. Her cryptic utterances delivered in a trance-like state were a profound act of divination, a complex choreography of belief that mesmerized and terrified all who witnessed or heard of it. The priestess's trance and enigmatic pronouncements placed the immense burden of interpretation squarely on the shoulders of kings, generals, and common supplicants alike. Imagine the tension as an envoy returns with a prophecy. Its meaning veiled, its implications potentially catastrophic. A great empire will fall, the Pythia might say, but which empire? And when mistakes in understanding misinterpretations of these divine messages often led to devastating consequences, altering the course of wars and the fates of entire cities, this ritual performance isn't just about receiving information, it's about the terrifying responsibility of discerning divine will, a task that demanded not just intellect, but profound spiritual insight and often a hefty dose of luck. You learn that sometimes the answers you seek bring more questions, and the truth when it comes from the gods is rarely straightforward. Beyond the formal rituals, prophetic utterance itself, whether from a revered oracle or a cursed individual like Cassandra, was seen as a reflection of a profound connection with divine truth. You understood that the clarity or ambiguity of the message and the way it was delivered was judged as much as the content. Cassandra's frantic warnings, though true, were dismissed precisely because her delivery was perceived as madness, a sign of her cursed state rather than a channel for divine insight. This reflected a deeper cultural understanding of the balance of the cosmic order. A clear, measured prophecy from a respected oracle was seen as a sign of divine favour and cosmic harmony, while a disjointed or terrifying pronouncement, even if accurate, might be attributed to an imbalance, a curse, or a disturbing intrusion of chaos. You learn to listen not just to what is said, but how it is said, understanding that the vessel of the prophecy is as important as the message itself. This cultural discipline of interpreting prophetic delivery instilled a deeper appreciation for the subtle signs of divine influence, making you acutely aware of the delicate equilibrium that governed your world. The creation of myths themselves, turning natural disasters into poetry, or abstract fears into tangible monsters, was a high cultural art form, a profound societal performance. You see how your ancestors, and indeed your contemporaries, crafted compelling narratives to explain the inexplicable. Typhon, the primordial monster buried under Mount Etna, becomes the fury of the earth, Its volcanic eruptions a visible manifestation of his rage. The Hydra with its regenerating heads transforms the abstract fear of multiplying problems into a concrete, terrifying image. This poetry balanced raw human emotion, the fear of natural catastrophe, the wonder at the unknown, with a need for narrative restraint and structure. It wasn't enough to just experience terror. You needed to understand it, to categorize it, to give it a name and a story. This careful crafting of compelling monster myths was crucial for collective understanding and cultural cohesion. It provided a shared language for fear, a common framework for grappling with the terrifying aspects of your world. You understand that these stories aren't just entertainment, they are essential tools for making sense of a chaotic universe, for organizing your fears, and for passing on vital lessons about survival and divine power from one generation to the next. Funeral rites and libations in your ancient Greek world were far more than simple expressions of grief. They were elaborate cultural performances deeply ingrained in the social fabric and infused with spiritual significance. You understand that these acts weren't just about remembrance. They were a public and private demonstration of respect for the dead, and crucially for the divine order of the afterlife. Imagine the solemn procession, the careful preparation of the body, the placing of a coin under the deceased's tongue, a payment for Charon, the ferryman of the Underworld. You've been taught since childhood that this seemingly small detail is vital, ensuring the soul's peaceful passage across the river Styx. The pouring of libations, offerings of wine oil or milk onto the grave was another critical performance, a way to nourish the dead and maintain a connection with them in the afterlife. These rituals carried a heavy burden of duty. Any mistakes in their execution, any forgotten step or neglected offering were believed to have dire spiritual and social implications. An unburied soul, or one whose rites were incomplete, was condemned to wander eternally, unable to find peace, sometimes even returning to haunt the living. This belief instilled a profound sense of responsibility in every family member. You wouldn't just be disrespecting the dead. You'd be disrupting the cosmic order, inviting misfortune upon your household. The meticulous adherence to these rites underscores a deep cultural discipline, where the transition from life to death is a carefully orchestrated performance with eternal consequences. Underpinning all these cultural disciplines are the pervasive spiritual frameworks and superstitions that define your worldview. You recognize that monsters are not just physical threats. They are often the personification of primordial forces and divine manifestations, making the unseen, intangible forces of the universe feel terrifyingly real. Consider Typhon, born from Gaia the Earth, and Tartarus the Abyss. He isn't merely a giant beast. He personifies raw, unrelenting natural chaos. Earthquakes that shake the ground beneath your feet, volcanoes that spew fire, and ash storms that rage across the sea. These are not mere geological or meteorological events. For you, they are direct manifestations of Typhon's rage, his struggles beneath Mount Etna. This makes the fury of the earth a deeply spiritual experience rather than a scientific one, reinforcing a worldview where nature is alive with divine will and immense, terrifying power. When the ground trembles, you don't think of tectonic plates. You think of a monster stirring a primal force, reminding you of your utter insignificance. This spiritual framework imbues every natural disaster with a profound, terrifying meaning, a direct message from the ancient, untamed forces of the cosmos. Echidna, the mother of monsters, offers another glimpse into this spiritual framework, representing wild nature, mythological fertility itself, and the fertile chaos beyond the ordered city-states. You understand that the untamed world, the deep forests, the hidden caves, the rugged mountains, is not just unexplored territory. It's a place teeming with spiritual danger, a realm where the monstrous is born. Her existence embodies the powerful belief that the natural world in its rawest, most fertile state births the very things that frighten you. This belief infuses every rustle in the undergrowth, every shadow in a cave with a heightened sense of menace. The gleam of a predator's eye in the dark, the unsettling quiet of a deep forest. These are not just signs of animal life. They're reminders of Echidna's progeny, of the countless horrors she unleashed upon the world. She represents the uncontrollable, the fecund and the terrifying aspects of nature that lie just beyond the reach of human civilization. For you, venturing into the wilderness isn't just about facing wild animals. It's about entering a sacred, dangerous realm where chaos reigns and monsters are born. Within your spiritual framework, the monstrous often serves a crucial role in maintaining cosmic order, even if that order is terrifying. Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades, epitomizes this. He isn't merely a frightening beast. He's a spiritual boundary, an unyielding guardian ensuring no soul escaped the underworld, no living foot stepped too far. You understand that his eternal vigilance reflects a deep-seated belief in a structured cosmos where every realm, the living, the dead, the divine, has its proper place and its inviolable borders. More than death itself, imbalance was feared. A soul escaping Hades would disrupt the natural cycle, throwing the universe into disarray. A living mortal entering without permission would violate the sacred separation of realms. Cerberus, therefore, is not a force of pure evil, but a loyal if terrifying guardian who upholds this sacred, unyielding order. His relentless barks, echoing through the shadowed caverns of the underworld, are a constant reminder that once you cross the threshold of death, there is no turning back. You learn that even the most monstrous entities can be instruments of divine will, serving a higher purpose in the intricate machinery of the cosmos, ensuring that the boundaries between worlds remain fixed and unyielding. The Hydra and the Chimera, beyond their physical destructiveness, also carry profound spiritual weight as personifications of enduring struggle and impossible problems. The Hydra, with its regenerating heads, represents not just a physical threat, but the nature of struggle itself, the idea that for every problem you solve, two more might arise, a seemingly endless cycle of challenge. Its defeat by Heracles through cunning and cauterization teaches you that some battles require not brute force but intellect, strategic thinking, and perhaps even ritualistic precision. This gives spiritual form to human perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds, a grim encouragement that even the most daunting Hydra-headed problems can be overcome with the right approach. Similarly, the Chimera, an unnatural fusion of lion, goat and serpent, spiritually represents impossible problems or challenges that defy conventional solutions. Its very existence is a violation of natural order, a creature that shouldn't be yet is. Its defeat by Bellerophon on Pegasus symbolizes the triumph of skill, divine aid and ingenuity over chaotic, unnatural forces. These monsters, therefore, are not just obstacles for heroes. They are spiritual metaphors for the trials and tribulations of life, shaping your understanding of human resilience and the necessity of wisdom in the face of chaos. Medusa's curse and transformation stand as a profound lesson in spiritual trauma and the capricious nature of divine power. Her story, once a beautiful priestess violated by Poseidon in Athena's temple, then cursed by Athena herself, transforming her into a Gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone showcases, a spiritual framework where beauty could be cursed and power could be weaponized by the gods. You understand that Medusa is not just a monster. She's a figure of tragic spiritual trauma, a victim of divine injustice who is then made into an instrument of terror. Her terrifying existence serves as a terrifying cautionary tale about divine caprice, demonstrating that even piety and innocence offer no protection against the gods' whims or their jealousies. She embodies the chilling truth that divine power can inflict unimaginable suffering, transforming an individual's very essence into something monstrous and destructive. Her story, you realize, is a constant quiet warning about the fragility of mortal life and the unpredictable, often cruel nature of divine intervention, a terrifying reminder that even in your spiritual devotion you are never truly safe. The Furies born from Uranus's blood after his castration are primeval forces of vengeance, particularly for kinslaying, making guilt a terrifying spiritual entity that actively hunts its prey. You understand that these terrifying goddesses, sometimes depicted with snake hair and bat wings, are not just mythological figures. They are the embodiment of conscience and blood guilt, the relentless pursuit of justice for the most heinous crimes against family. Their very presence creates miasma, a spiritual pollution that clung to the perpetrator and their entire lineage. You're taught that their pursuit made the mind their hunting ground, and their relentless hounding brought madness. Imagine Orestes tormented by the Furies after killing his mother Clytemnestra, even though he was avenging his father Agamemnon's murder. He wandered the land driven to insanity by their incessant torment, seeing them when others could not, feeling their poisonous breath. This underscores a profound belief in inherent spiritual pollution, miasma, and an unyielding divine justice that transcends mortal law. The Furies embody the terrifying truth that some transgressions are so profound they literally infect your soul, driving you to madness and ensuring that true peace is impossible until atonement or divine intervention is achieved. Their existence ensures that no crime, especially against family, goes unpunished, and that the spiritual consequences are as real and as horrifying as any physical torment. Prophecy and fate, Moira, are not merely concepts in your world. They are inescapable spiritual laws dictating a predetermined existence that even the gods cannot fully defy. You learn that prophecy is seen as a sentence spoken aloud, not a warning that can be avoided, but a declaration of what will happen. The Fates, Moira, ancient goddesses who spun, measured and cut the threads of life. Clotho the spinner, Lachesis the apportioner, and Atropos the cutter held a power that even Zeus, the king of the gods, respected. This deeply embeds the spiritual belief that destiny is a web already woven, a cosmic tapestry whose design cannot be altered. Imagine the weight of knowing your future is predetermined, that attempts to escape your fate ironically ensure its fulfillment. Oedipus, attempting to avoid the prophecy that he would kill his father and marry his mother, fled his supposed home only to unknowingly fulfill the very prophecy he sought to escape. This is a terrifying testament to unyielding fate, teaching you that free will is often an illusion, and that your life in many ways is a script already written. This belief instills a profound sense of submission to a higher cosmic order tempering human ambition, with the chilling understanding that your ultimate end is already determined, woven into the very fabric of existence by the silent, unyielding hands of the Fates. From the grand tapestry of cultural disciplines and spiritual frameworks, you now turn to a more intimate yet equally fraught aspect of your life. Love, marriage and family life all lived under the pervasive and often terrifying shadow of divine interference. You quickly realize that these bonds, which in other worlds might be sources of comfort and joy, are in yours often subjected to capricious whims, deadly curses and tragic outcomes. The divine shadow cast over these personal relationships means that love is rarely simple, and family life is perpetually precarious. You understand that marriages are not always built on affection but on alliances, and that romantic love, when it does bloom, can be a destructive force capable of shattering lives and inciting wars. This awareness permeates your deepest emotional connections, reminding you that even in the most private spheres, the gods can intrude, bringing with them a cascade of unforeseen consequences and profound suffering. You learn to approach love and family with a certain caution, a quiet understanding that even these most cherished bonds are vulnerable to the whims of the divine and the often destructive power of fate. Marriage in your ancient Greek society, while a fundamental social contract and a means of securing alliances, was often less about personal affection and more about strategic partnerships. More alarmingly, it was frequently a tool for divine manipulation or a source of profound tragedy, showcasing the explosive potential of love in this world. Consider the abduction of Helen by Paris triggered by a divine bribe from Aphrodite during the judgment of Paris. This single act sparked the catastrophic Trojan War, demonstrating that alliances, not personal affection, often drove such unions, and that love, particularly when influenced by the gods, was an explosive, destructive force. You understand that your own marriage, if you're a woman, is likely arranged a pragmatic agreement between families to secure wealth status or political stability. Personal desires often take a back seat to these larger societal and familial considerations. And when romantic love does intrude, especially if it defies societal norms or divine will, it can be a profoundly dangerous illusion. The story of Helen teaches you that even the most beautiful woman caught between divine promises and mortal duty can become a pawn in a larger destructive game, her love a catalyst for untold suffering. You learn that in this world, a love, particularly the passionate, unbridled kind, is often a destructive force, rather than a tender one, a wild current capable of sweeping away lives and entire civilizations. The profound lack of agency for women in your society is starkly illustrated by the tragic origins of figures like Medusa and Scylla. Their horrific transformations stem directly from unwanted divine attention and subsequent punishment by jealous goddesses. Medusa, a beautiful priestess, was assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple, and then rather than the perpetrator, she was punished by Athena, transformed into the Gorgon, whose gaze turned men to stone. Scylla, another beautiful maiden, attracted the desire of the sea god Glaucus, but was transformed into a monster by the jealous sorceress Circe. These narratives highlight the brutal reality that women were often victims of divine whim pawns in larger cosmic games, leading to unimaginable suffering and grotesque dehumanization. You understand that your body, your beauty, your very essence can be irrevocably altered or destroyed by forces beyond your control with little to no recourse. These stories serve as terrifying cautionary tales, reinforcing the idea that a woman's fate could be dictated not by her own choices, but by the desires and jealousies of gods and powerful beings. It paints a bleak picture of female existence where even in moments of vulnerability, divine eyes are watching, and divine power is ready to transform you in horrific ways. Romantic love, when it manifests, is often depicted as a dangerous illusion, a force that leads to self-destruction rather than enduring happiness. The story of Narcissus and Echo is a poignant example. Narcissus, cursed by Nemesis to fall in love with his own reflection, wastes away gazing at his image until he transforms into a flower. Echo, doomed to repeat others' words due to Hera's curse, pines away in unrequited love for Narcissus, until only her voice remains. You rarely stumble upon a happily ever after in these old myths. It seems love here prefers to bloom softly by riverbanks, only to quickly fade into despair or more often dramatically escalate to madness and death. This societal narrative shapes your understanding of deep emotional attachment, instilling a wariness towards intense romantic passions. You learn that such love, while perhaps beautiful in its fleeting moments, is often a gamble that leads to ruin rather than happiness, a poignant reminder of the fragility and often tragic nature of human connection under the shadow of divine intervention. Divine interference frequently leads to the ruin of even the most noble families, demonstrating how capricious gods could shatter the very foundation of your society. The tragic story of Phaedra and Hippolytus is a chilling testament to this. Phaedra, cursed by Aphrodite to fall madly in love with her chaste stepson, Hippolytus finds herself ensnared by an impossible, shameful desire that she cannot control. When Hippolytus rejects her advances, she in her desperation and shame hangs herself, leaving a false note accusing him of assault. This ultimately leads to Hippolytus's death, cursed by his father Theseus, who believed Phaedra's lie. You witness how divine meddling creates a cascade of destruction for which no one could escape blame, leaving only sorrow and desolation in its wake. This isn't just a tale of illicit love. It's a profound illustration of how the gods use mortals as pawns in their own eternal rivalries and games, inflicting unimaginable suffering on innocent families. You learn that your own desires, your own family bonds are never truly safe from the intrusive, destructive hand of the divine. This story, passed down through generations, reinforces the understanding that even the purest intentions can be corrupted by a god's whim, leading to an inescapable cycle of tragedy and ruin that echoes through the halls of your palaces and the quiet corners of your homes. The consequences of transgression, particularly adultery, were severe, and often bloody, triggering multi-generational curses and cycles of vengeance that left a trail of horror. You hear the grim tales whispered in hushed tones of families consumed by their own misdeeds. Consider the adultery between Thyestes and Atreus' wife, a betrayal that led to Atreus exacting a horrifying revenge by feeding Thyestes his own children in a banquet. Or the adultery between Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, which resulted in the murder of Agamemnon upon his triumphant return from Troy. These stories showcase the brutal consequences for marital transgressions, which were not just personal betrayals but profound violations of social and cosmic order. Such acts could unleash a familial curse, a stain of blood guilt that clung to an entire lineage, leading to an endless cycle of murder and retribution across generations. You understand that your personal choices, particularly those that violate sacred bonds, have far-reaching impacts capable of bringing down not just yourself, but your children and your children's children. This fear of inherited curses ensures a certain rigidity in social conduct, a grim understanding that transgression has eternal, terrifying consequences that ripple through time. The deadly nature of divine affection is another harsh reality you learn to accept. Zeus, the king of the gods with his many mortal lovers, provides countless examples of how being desired by a god was often a punishment, not a blessing. Semele io Callisto Danae, their stories are filled with transformation, torment, and tragic ends. Semele, tricked by Hera, asked to see Zeus in his true form, and was incinerated by his divine radiance. Io was transformed into a cow by Zeus to hide her from Hera, then tormented endlessly by a gadfly sent by Hera. Callisto, a nymph sworn to Artemis, was seduced by Zeus and then transformed into a bear by Hera, later becoming a constellation. Danae, impregnated by Zeus in a shower of gold, was cast into the sea with her infant son Perseus. These narratives teach you that the gift of divine affection is often lethal, resulting in incineration, transformation into animals, or endless torment by a jealous goddess like Hera. You learn that being desired by a god, while perhaps initially flattering, is a dangerous predicament, stripping you of your agency and often leading to an unbearable fate. It's a terrifying reminder that even the most powerful love can be a source of immense suffering, and that the gods' passions are rarely gentle, often destroying those they claim to cherish. The Greek concept of eros, unlike the modern notion of soft romantic affection, was understood as a divine madness, a force, a spark of chaos that stripped mortals of reason and control. You quickly realize that in your world, love isn't something to be gently cultivated. It's a powerful, unsettling, almost terrifying surrender of the self. This was deeply unsettling in a society that prized moderation, self-control, and rational thought. Eros was a primal force capable of driving individuals to irrational acts, reckless abandon, and ultimately ruin. Imagine falling under the spell of Eros, feeling your own will erode your carefully constructed sense of self, dissolve under its intense grip. The myths are replete with examples: Medea's furious love for Jason, which led her to kill her own brother and later her children; Phaedra's cursed passion for Hippolytus leading to her suicide. These stories illustrate that love in myth was to gamble, often leading to ruin rather than happiness. It's a terrifying surrender of the self to an uncontrollable power, a reminder that even the most profound human emotions are subject to divine influence and can lead to catastrophic ends. You learn to approach deep emotional bonds with a certain apprehension, understanding that while they might offer fleeting ecstasy, they often carry the potential for immense pain and irreversible destruction. From the intimate struggles of love and family, you now turn to the profound weight of clan identity and unshakable shame, recognizing that your individual fate is inextricably linked to the reputation and history of your lineage. In your world, you are rarely just an individual. You are a member of a family, a clan, and its collective honor or dishonor clings to you like a second skin. The entire house of Atreus stands as a prime terrifying example of IE being inseparable from a multi-generational curse. You know their story, the original sin of Tantalus serving his son Pelops to the gods, Pelops' curse on Myrtilus, then the horrific act of Atreus who fed his brother Thyestes his own children. This led to a cycle of betrayal, murder and madness that plagued generation after generation, encompassing Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, Orestes and Electra. This demonstrates how individual actions, particularly heinous ones, had far-reaching impact on the entire lineage, and instilled a fixed spiritual rot that clung to a name. Imagine being born into such a family knowing that your very blood carries the stain of ancestral crimes. This isn't just a historical anecdote, it's a living curse that affects your prospects, your relationships, and your entire identity. You understand that your personal choices, no matter how virtuous, might not be enough to escape the shadow of your ancestors. The House of Atreus is a constant grim reminder that some shame is unshakable, an eternal burden passed down through the bloodline, a terrifying testament to the enduring power of inherited guilt and divine retribution. Oedipus's doomed lineage and public shame further highlight this profound connection to clan identity. You know Oedipus's fate unknowingly killing his father and marrying his mother, bringing unimaginable miasma spiritual pollution and public shame upon his royal house in Thebes. His self-blinding was an act of extreme penance, a desperate attempt to mitigate this inherited shame to ritually cleanse himself and his family from the horrific pollution. This highlights how the clan, as the primary source of identity and reputation, could be utterly destroyed by one man's tragic fated actions, even if those actions were committed in ignorance. You understand that your family's honour is your honour, and its shame is your shame, a burden you carry whether you personally committed the transgression or not. The public spectacle of Oedipus's fall, the horrified reactions of his citizens, reinforces the idea that an individual's actions can cast a shadow so dark it consumes an entire lineage, leaving only a legacy of terror and profound dishonour. This is the weight of the inescapable truth that your identity is not your own, but a product of your ancestors' glories and more often their curses. The concept of inherited shame extends even to those who, through no fault of their own, inadvertently fulfill terrifying prophecies. Perseus's accidental fulfillment of prophecy is a poignant example. You recall his story. His grandfather King Acrisius of Argos received a prophecy that his grandson would kill him. In an attempt to avert this fate, he imprisoned his daughter Danae, but Zeus impregnated her in a shower of gold and Perseus was born. Acrisius then cast Danae and the infant Perseus into the sea in a chest. Despite these efforts, Perseus years later inadvertently killed his grandfather with a discus at a sporting event. This demonstrates how an individual's fixed destiny birthright could bring doom and dishonour to their lineage even without malicious intent. You understand that destiny, once woven by the fates, is an unyielding force, and even the most heroic figures cannot escape its grasp. Perseus, a celebrated hero who slew Medusa, was nonetheless tainted by the accidental kinslaying, a grim reminder that fate often works in cruel and unexpected ways. This story instills a deep sense of humility and resignation. You learn that even if you try to do everything right, the hand of destiny might still guide you to an outcome of profound dishonour, a burden you must carry regardless of your personal intentions. The lineage of Cadmus, the mythical founder of Thebes, serves as another chilling example. of how scandal and divine punishment could reduce a noble line to obscurity. You know that Cadmus, in his quest to found Thebes, killed a sacred dragon of Ares, incurring the god's wrath. This act initiated a long line of misfortune for his descendants, including Pentheus being torn apart by Maenad's Actaeon, being eaten by his own hounds, and Semele being incinerated by Zeus. Ultimately, Cadmus and his wife Harmonia were transformed into serpents, leaving only a whisper of their former grandeur. This illustrates how a once noble line marked by initial transgression and subsequent divine punishment could be riddled with misfortune, its glory fading into obscurity, its humanly lost to monstrous transformation. You learn that divine anger can span generations, slowly eroding the very humanity of a family, turning them into creatures of myth, a stark and terrifying end to a once proud lineage. The fear of such a reduction of losing your human identity and being forgotten is a powerful motivator for piety and caution. The drive for Kleos glory, thus fame, was a direct counterpoint to this pervasive fear of the clan being forgotten or diminished by ignominy. You understand that for ancient Greeks the cruelest fate of all was not death, but to be erased from memory, to have your name and your lineage vanish into the mists of time. This profound fear made individual deeds vital for the enduring reputation of the IE, and thus a constant motivation for heroic, often perilous acts. Imagine a warrior facing a formidable enemy or a hero embarking on a dangerous quest. Their courage is fueled not just by personal bravery, but by the desire to secure Kleos for their family, to ensure their name lives on, remembered for valour and achievement. This drive for glory is a desperate struggle against oblivion, a way to defy the threat of obscurity and leave an indelible mark on history. You learn that your actions, your courage, your sacrifices are not just for yourself. They are for your ancestors, for your children, for the eternal memory of your clan. This cultural imperative instills a fierce, sometimes reckless ambition, a willingness to face monsters and defy death itself, all in the service of an enduring legacy. The belief in miasma, a spiritual pollution that could be inherited, meant that an individual's actions, particularly severe crimes like kinslaying, literally made their entire clan unclean. You understand that this wasn't just a social stigma, it was a tangible spiritual stain that affected their social standing, their ability to participate in rituals and their interactions with others. A family under the shadow of miasma was effectively ostracized, their very name carrying a stain of dread, a palpable sense of spiritual impurity that everyone could perceive. This collective guilt and spiritual pollution meant that an entire clan could be rendered unclean, affecting every aspect of their lives. You understand that this wasn't merely a social stigma, it was a tangible spiritual stain that alienated them from their community. They might be barred from religious ceremonies, their offerings to the gods rejected, their very presence considered defiling. The weight of miasma meant that their social standing plummeted, their marriage prospects diminished, and their interactions with others were marked by suspicion and avoidance. Imagine carrying a stain that everyone could see even if they couldn't articulate it, a dread that clung to your family name like an unwelcome shadow. This belief instilled a profound fear of committing acts that could bring such a curse upon your lineage, emphasizing collective responsibility and the enduring power of spiritual consequence. The transformation of the Furies into the Eumenides kindly ones after Orestes' trial marked a significant cultural shift, offering a glimmer of hope that the terrifying cycle of inherited shame and bloodlust might be broken. You recall the climactic trial of Orestes in Athens, where he was hounded by the Furies for the matricide of Clytemnestra, a crime that, while avenging his father, plunged him into deep miasma. Athena intervenes, establishing the first court of law, the Areopagus, to try Orestes. The Furies demand blood for blood, upholding the ancient law of vengeance, but Apollo defends Orestes, arguing for a more nuanced justice. The jury, divided, is swayed by Athena's vote and Orestes is acquitted. This judgment appeased the Furies who, persuaded by Athena, transformed into the benevolent Eumenides, guardians of Athenian justice. This event symbolized a profound societal evolution, the idea that the collective vengeance for blood crimes against the IE could in principle be mediated by law, by rational discourse, and by a formal justice system, rather than an endless, brutal cycle of retribution. It offered a glimpse into a future where terrifying divine intervention could give way to human legal structures, suggesting that, while inherited shame was real, a path to absolution and reconciliation, albeit by divine intervention, could exist. You realise that this shift from primal vengeance to structured law was a monumental step in your society's understanding of justice, offering a fragile hope amidst the pervasive fear of curses and divine wrath. From the intricate systems of power control and human responses that defined your existence, you now step back to grasp the foundational realities and overarching structures that underpinned the entire ancient Greek world, providing the macro-level context for all that unfolded. You understand that everything you've learned thus far, from the mundane challenges of daily life to the profound spiritual beliefs, is built upon this bedrock of social hierarchy, economic precariousness, and the relentless, often terrifying forces of nature. The fundamental realities of ancient Greek society, including its rigid hierarchy, precarious economy, and vulnerability to nature's wrath, were often inextricably linked to the terrifying influence and presence of its gods and monsters, forming the very bedrock of mortal life. You recognise that these aren't just external factors, they are active participants in your daily narrative, shaping your destiny and dictating the terms of your existence. This macro-level understanding helps you to see the interconnectedness of all things, how the smallest act of a mortal can ripple through the cosmic order, and how the greatest powers can still be swayed by human piety or provocation. It's a vast, complex, and often terrifying system, but it is your system, the foundational reality of your world. The inescapable social hierarchy of ancient Greece forms the very spine of your existence, a rigid structure where gods, kings, and mortals occupy fixed, often terrifyingly interconnected positions. You quickly learn that your place in this world is largely predetermined, and while ambition might drive some, the boundaries of your social stratum are often unyielding, enforced by both mortal and divine powers. At the highest echelon of this hierarchy are the divine overlords, the powerful, often capricious Olympians Zeus, Hera, Athena, etc., and primordial forces like Gaia Tartarus and, most critically, the Fates Moira. These beings often dictate the fixed destiny birthright of all others, their squabbles, their loves, and their decrees shaping the entire world order with an unseen, terrifying hand. You understand that their power is absolute, their whims unpredictable, and your life is in many ways a minor subplot in their grand cosmic drama. You offer prayers, sacrifices, and respect, not just out of devotion, but out of a desperate need to avoid their attention, for their interest can be as deadly as their wrath. Below the gods, yet still wielding immense power, are royalty and demigods, who act as intermediaries between the divine and mortal realms. Kings like Minos of Crete, who demanded tribute for the Minotaur, or heroes like Heracles and Theseus, who were often of divine parentage, held high-level societal roles. They sometimes served as conduits for divine will, acting on behalf of the gods, but often they were also victims of it, caught in the crosshairs of divine jealousy, or cursed by ancient prophecies. You see how they constantly balance power and peril, their elevated status coming with immense responsibilities and often a tragic fate. They are powerful, yes, but still subject to a higher authority, navigating a precarious position between two worlds. Next in the hierarchy are the nobles and warriors, whom you might consider the samurai analogues of your world. This warrior class, including heroes and their retinue, serves as protectors and enforcers for the kings, and implicitly for the divine order. Their power, however, is often granted or revoked by divine favour. A hero might be blessed by Athena one day and driven mad by Hera the next. This demonstrates that even their elevated status is precarious and subject to celestial whim demanding constant vigilance and appeasement. You understand that even the most skilled warrior is ultimately a pawn in the larger game played by the gods, their glory fleeting their downfall swift if they displease Olympus. The vast majority of society comprises commoners, peasants, artisans, merchants. Your life, if you belong to this group, is dictated by the will of kings and the whims of gods. Your high-level roles involve the essential functions of agriculture, craft and trade, forming the backbone of society, but your existence is fundamentally shaped by the unpredictable, often terrifying forces of myth. You are the ones who suffer famine when Demeter grieves, whose ships are lost to Scylla and Charybdis, whose children are taken as tribute. You have little recourse against these powers your daily life, a constant struggle for survival and stability under the shadow of the divine. At the very bottom of this rigid hierarchy are the outcasts and the doomed. This category includes literal monsters like the Minotaur or Medusa, who are not just creatures but often former mortals transformed by divine curses. It also encompasses individuals or families burdened by inherited curses like the House of Atreus or Oedipus. Their existence defines the extreme limits of social order, often serving as terrifying cautionary examples of what happens when divine displeasure or primordial chaos manifests. You understand that to fall into this category is to experience the ultimate rejection, to be stripped of your humanity, and to become a perpetual warning to others. This social stratification from the gods to the damned is the unshakable framework that governs every aspect of your life, a constant reminder of power, privilege, and terrifying vulnerability. The core economy and resource management in your ancient Greek world are as precarious as they are vital, constantly threatened and often directly controlled by the terrifying influence of gods and monsters. You quickly understand that wealth is fleeting, and sustenance is never guaranteed, for the very foundations of your economic life are subject to supernatural whims and destructive forces. Your primary economic driver is an agrarian base with grain, olive oil and grapes serving as the dominant currency and the bedrock of your society. However, this base is extremely vulnerable to divine displeasure. Imagine Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, consumed by grief over Persephone's abduction to the Underworld. During her mourning, she neglects her duties, and you witness the horrific consequences. Crops failed, famine spread, the green world turned brown. This demonstrates the gods' absolute terrifying control over life-sustaining resources, turning abundance into barrenness with a single divine emotion. You learn that your prosperity, your very survival, is always at the mercy of the gods, who can bless you with bountiful harvests or curse you with devastating famine. Taxation and tribute are omnipresent instruments of power, manifesting not just as levies on your produce, but sometimes as brutal, horrifying demands. The Athenians' tribute of youths to the Minotaur, which you've already examined, is a stark example of how this system could operate. These tributes highlight a broad struggle for essential resources, not just material wealth, but human life itself. Dictated by victorious kings or divine decrees, they instill a deep sense of helplessness in the populace. You understand that your rulers and the gods can exact a price far greater than gold, demanding the most precious of your resources, your children. This economic detail rooted in terror is a constant reminder of who truly holds power over life and death. Maritime trade, while crucial for connecting city-states and acquiring resources from distant lands, is perpetually threatened by both natural dangers and monstrous entities. Violent storms, unpredictable whirlpools, and treacherous sea currents are not just phenomena. They are attributed to Poseidon's temperament or personified by monsters like Scylla and Charybdis. This makes resource acquisition and distribution inherently risky, with little to no formal relief efforts against these overwhelming forces. You hear tales of shipwrecks, of lost cargo, of entire crews vanishing into the depths. Every shipment, every voyage is a gamble against elemental and monstrous forces impacting the stability of your economy and the availability of essential goods. Divine control over wealth and scarcity is a recurring theme. The myth of King Midas, whose wish for a golden touch turned all his food and drink to gold, illustrated that even immense wealth could be a curse when divine generosity came with unforeseen terrifying consequences. You see how the gods hold ultimate terrifying control over resource management and economic well-being, bestowing blessings that can quickly turn into burdens. This reinforces the understanding that true prosperity is not just about accumulating riches, but about maintaining divine favour, a delicate balance easily upset by hubris or unintended offence. Finally, sacrifice and offerings constitute a significant part of your economy, acting as a direct form of taxation on mortal prosperity. These rituals, ranging from simple libations to elaborate animal sacrifices, are essential for seeking divine favour, protection from monsters, and ensuring good harvests. This is a constant economic detail in the daily lives of all Greeks, driven by fear of divine wrath and hope for blessings. You carefully select the finest parts of your harvest, or your livestock, for the gods, understanding that this exchange, this negotiation with the divine, is as crucial for your economic survival as planting seeds or trading goods. It's a profound reminder that in your world the economy is not just a human system. It is deeply interwoven with the terrifying and unpredictable will of the gods and the monstrous forces they wield. As the last echoes of these ancient realities fade, allow your mind to gently drift back to the quiet comfort of your present. The shadows of the Hydra, the screams of the Harpies, the chilling presence of the Minotaur. They begin to recede, becoming whispers of a long-past world, a time when every rustle in the dark, every strange sound on the wind held a deeper, more terrifying meaning. You can almost feel the softness of your own bed, the gentle warmth of your room, a stark contrast to the rough, uncertain existence you've just traversed. Imagine the relief of knowing your food is safe, your water clean, your family secure, untouched by vengeful gods or lurking beasts. The meticulous rituals, the constant vigilance against miasma, the fear of unspoken truths, they dissolve into the ease of your modern life. There are no minotaurs demanding tribute outside your city, no harpies snatching your dinner, no sphinx challenging your intellect on the road. The world outside your window hums with predictable order, a comfort unimaginable to the ancient Greeks. So let that sense of peace settle over you now, a gentle blanket of tranquility. As the images of terrifying monsters become fainter and the weight of their world lifts, feel your breath deepen, your muscles relax. Let the quiet hum of your own present lull you into a soft, peaceful slumber. Sweet dreams, dreamers.